The irony, of course, here is that US economic weakness often promotes broad-based US dollar strength, because if the US starts to slow down, the rest of the world starts to slow down too. So we have this unusual situation where a US recession could actually prompt a dollar strength. So what would cause the US dollar to weaken then? We think once we emerge the other side of this inflationary outbreak, once the Fed starts to entertain the idea, even in rhetorical terms, about a future rate cut, then that could prompt a wave of US dollar selling. That's probably at least 6 months away in our view. And the reason why it should be dollar negative is that the Fed will be amongst the first to cut, at least of the major central banks. The RBNZ will probably get there first in terms of all of G10, but the ECB will probably hold the line for longer than the Fed does, and that should give the euro an opportunity to nudge higher, and that will take up towards 112, 113 by the middle of next year in our view.
Okay, so if we're thinking in pairs, and with the timeline that you're suggesting in terms of the Fed and potentially at the start of, let's just call it the start of 2024, that they start to come to that realisation, what does that then mean for the yen? Because that sort of aligns with the expectation that we are going to start to see potentially some tweaks to their own policy by them, because there's obviously no rationale that they've suggested yet that they're looking to move, but reasonably expecting some tightening to come through 2024. So does that mean that you're relatively bullish on the strength of the yen at the start of the year?
Exactly right. So just like Aussie, it has most to lose over the next 6 months versus the US dollar, the yen has most to gain against the US dollar once we emerge the other side. So the key reason why dollar yen has been so elevated for the last 12 months is the carry is just so juicy. And if the Fed starts to cut or even starts to talk about cutting, we'll see that carry decline, and that will undermine that trade and rattle the cozy consensus, if you like, that the yen should stay super weak forevermore. So we would see the yen rallying for most of next year as those Fed cuts start to come through. Now, as you said, if it were to combine with some manoeuvring domestically in Japan, where the Bank of Japan starts to tweak its yield curve control framework, then that will just amplify the yen response. But it would be a matter of secondary importance with regard to the yen. The Fed would still be very much in the driving seat.